The young monk went down the mountain to beg for alms for the first time, only to be pounced on by a pack of women. They desperately threw themselves at him, and the young monk was so frightened he kept chanting the mantra of purity, Qingxin Zhou. Although he was a monk, he possessed a stunningly beautiful appearance. Merely cleaning the floor diligently would draw love-struck women to sneak glances at him. This greatly distressed the young monk. But it wasn't just women who liked him. Even the monks in the temple coveted him. The young monk was utterly overwhelmed. And female faces often appeared in his mind. He felt he had violated the precepts. And could only rely on meditation to dispel the impure thoughts in his heart. Life in the monastery was meager, but there was no lack of infighting and scheming among the fellow monks. They were jealous of the young monk's popularity with women and deliberately slandered him in front of the abbot. Consequently, the abbot forbade the young monk from going down the mountain to beg for alms. The senior monks thought that without the young monk, they would finally enjoy the bliss of being surrounded by women. But although women did surround them, it was only to force them to hand over the little monk. Upon learning that the young monk would never come out for alms again, the enraged women gave them a brutal beating. The little monk felt that perhaps staying on the mountain was a good thing. He truly couldn't handle the women down below. But one day, while quietly sweeping the mountain path, he heard a woman calling him. He looked up and saw a gentle, beautiful young lady. She was different from the other women. She didn't rush to pounce on him immediately. This, instead, piqued the young monk's curiosity. He was about to say a few words to her when the woman quickly ran into the bamboo forest. Clutching her fluttering heart, appearing to have a lot to say but too shy to speak, the young monk quickly chased after her. The woman then took out a mask and covered her face. Curious about the face beneath the mask, the young monk softly asked why she was concealing her face. The woman slowly revealed the upper half of her face and gently spoke of her admiration and love for the young monk. Growing emotional, she started to take off her clothes. The young monk stepped forward, intending to help her put her clothes back on, but his hand was suddenly scorched. He turned back in shock. There was no beautiful woman at all. Only a faceless female demon. The young monk encountered a woman wearing a mask. And was overwhelmed with curiosity. What kind of peerless beauty could be hiding beneath it? But the woman only removed half of her mask. Before shyly and timidly confessing her feelings to him. The young monk didn't know how to respond. When the woman, overcome with emotion, suddenly began undressing. The young monk hurried forward to help her put her clothes back on, but his hand was suddenly scorched. He looked back only to realize there was no beautiful lady at all, it was clearly a faceless female demon. Terrified, the young monk spun around and ran. Back at the temple, he looked at his scorched hand. His mind filled with memories of the passionate women down the mountain. He quickly sat down to meditate, hoping to calm his thoughts. But his mind was completely out of control. The women in his imagination grew more and more fervent. Even old women wouldn't leave him alone. The young monk shook his head desperately, trying to drive the thoughts away. But this time even the faces of his senior brothers mixed in. More and more women's faces crowded his mind. And he just couldn't shake them off. He completely drove himself mad, rolling frantically on the floor. His fellow monks rushed to hold him down but couldn't. And in the end, they could only tie him to a pillar. When the young monk regained consciousness, he realized he couldn't go on like this. So, he said goodbye to the abbot and planned to travel down the mountain. However, the situation did not improve. When walking on the street, he would be pulled and harassed by women. When staying overnight in a farmhouse, he would be pounced on by women in the middle of the night. With no other choice, he headed deep into the mountains to live. Yet even there, someone touched his face. He turned around, but no one was there. The fantasies tormented him non-stop, leading the young monk to become paranoid and suspicious. One day, he was walking along the road in frustration when he happened to see a samurai standing next to a corpse. When the samurai saw the young monk, and asked him to perform a rite of transcendence, Chao Du, for the deceased, he agreed without hesitation. However, the samurai kept staring at his handsome face, clearly captivated by his appearance as well, and insisted on following him and refused to leave. The two arrived at a village and discovered something strange. The men there had all been drained into dried husks by a spirit creature. The woman's husband had been drained and killed by a demon, Yao Jing, turning him into a dried husk. It was said that there had already been 10 victims before him. A female demon lived in the mountains. She wore a red dress and was seductively beautiful. Any man who saw her would be tempted and finally drained until they were dried husks. The old village chief desperately pleaded with the young monk and the samurai, hoping they could help subdue the demon. The young monk remembered the faceless female demon and was filled with dread toward any kind of demon. So he refused, saying his cultivation was insufficient. The samurai, however, was full of curiosity about the female demon and headed straight up the mountain without a word. The young monk then had a second thought, this demon was very similar to him. The only difference was that he seduced women, and the female demon seduced men. Perhaps this was a good opportunity to get rid of his inner demons. So, he began running frantically up the mountain. Just then, a heavy rain started in the mountains. The samurai vigilantly scanned his surroundings and suddenly drew his sword to attack, only to discover he had attacked a surviving villager. Meanwhile, the female demon silently appeared behind him. The samurai immediately swung his sword. By the time the young monk rushed over, everything was over. The samurai had also been drained into a dried husk by the female demon. The little monk quickly bowed his head and began chanting sutras. Yet, the female demon was closing in on him step by step. He was powerless to resist the female demon. He collapsed to the ground, crying his eyes out. Unfortunately, no one came to save him, even if he cried until his throat was hoarse. He had an epiphany: it was not his fault that he was handsome. And it was not his fault that women liked him. Once he understood this, the devil in his heart was released. The powerful female demon vanished instantly. And an even stronger demonic aura enveloped the world. Strange things appeared again in the small village. All the women in the village disappeared overnight. No one ever saw them again. From then on, the legend of the demonic monk began to spread.